Well, hello YouTube. Excuse me. This is Wes Fox with Fox Sports Outdoors, and Jared was asking me to do a review on this AR-15 that I built. Now I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. AR-15s aren't one of my favorite types of rifles. I know that people give them a bad name because of this and that and the other, but that's not why they're not my favorite. I like bolt action rifles. I can get more accuracy with them typically, and you know, for what I do, they just work better for me. Uh-oh, there's Milo. Hi, Milo. Milo's my dog. He's a Boston Terrier that looks kind of funny. So anyway, must be his supper time. So anyway, I decided, you know what the heck, I'll go ahead, and this is my fourth one. I had one back in the 80s when they were really a piece of junk. And then, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago, I bought a DPMS to shoot some CMP with, and it wasn't too bad. But I've never held on to one of them because they don't serve the purpose that I need them to serve, which is, for me anyway, which is hunting. Like I said, I prefer a bolt action rifle for that. And then here about maybe a year ago, I kind of got the urge for one again, and I picked up a different brand, kind of mainstream but kind of not, and it was a shooter. I mean, with the hand loads I was making for my bolt action 223, it would, you know, that rifle would almost shoot 3 of them into the same hole at 100 yards, almost, not quite, but this one, that rifle would easily hold a ½ inch at 100 yards with those same loads. And I thought, well, maybe this one will be a keeper. But the more and more I carried it, you know, when I was hunting coyotes and whatnot, the more and more I couldn't stand it because of the charging handle that's normally here. You know, they're kind of hard to get hold of in the first place, so I put an extension on it. Well, then whenever I carried it, it was either digging into me like this, or if I had it around the back, it was digging into my back, and it drove me absolutely bonkers. And the other thing, it wasn't slick sided like this one is, which this is a side charging upper, but with the brass deflector, and I think it might have been way over gassed or something. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with those concepts, but the way it would eject the brass, it would just beat the heck out of my brass. And I reloaded that brass. It was good brass. It was I just forgot the name of the company. I'll think of it in a minute and I'll come back to it. But it would just beat the heck out of my brass. And it was the same brass I used with my bolt action 223. And so we can't be having any more of this. Starline brass, that's what it was. So I sold it, and I really kind of took a beating on it, but you know, I couldn't stand having it in my gun cabinet. So the more and more I thought about it, I thought there's probably a way to, number one, build a relatively inexpensive AR-15 that's accurate, but also build one that I like, that doesn't, when I carry it, the charging handle isn't digging into me. It's easy to get to instead of this. All I got to do is pull this. And so I got to looking, and I found Bear Creek Arsenal. And for the most part, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm very happy. Before we go much farther, let me show you something. The rifle is completely empty. Mag's out, bolts back, safety's on. This rifle couldn't do nothing. Even if it could do something by itself, it couldn't. So anyway, I got to thinking there's bound to be a way to do this and get what I want instead of what people are willing to sell, or think that this is what we sell, this is what you should buy, blah 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 blah. And I really got kind of intrigued with these Bear Creek Arsenal uppers, and I did a review the other day on the accuracy side of it. Whenever I had to sight it in, I got a load worked up for it, and I needed to put some final touches on the sight in, but it's there, and it shoots good. It if you watch that review from either last week or a couple of weeks ago, I showed you where with my hand loads it will hold is actually just under 0.5 MOA. It was like 0.48 with a 3-round group, which like I said, I was testing my zero, not so much testing the complete accuracy of the rifle, because the rifle it held just over that, like 0.7 with 5-round groups when I was testing my loads. So it is a sub MOA rifle with my hand loads. With the ammo that I use for prairie dogs, coyotes, whatever else, is 50 grain Fiocchi polymer tip. It's actually got a Hornady VMAX bullet in it, and I've found this to be pretty good ammunition for its intended purpose. It's not match grade ammunition or this, that, and the other, but the brass is annealed. It's good brass, and it's accurate. And when I do my part, that will hold right at 1 MOA at 100 yards, give or take on depending on the day and how good I'm able to actually shoot that day and whatnot. So there's variance in there, but it's pretty close to 1 MOA. And I know that there's been some reviews on these uppers that are not favorable, to say the least. And I would have to disagree, at least in my experience with that mine's quite accurate, to say the least. I've shot prairie dogs out to almost 400 yards with it, but just over 350. And so I'm very, very pleased with this rifle. But Jared kind of wanted me to go into the build. I'm going to be straight up honest with you. I already had the scope, so I didn't have to buy that. I used 5-round mags for hunting. I got a couple of 30s, but I doubt they ever go in the rifle. So I use 5-round mags for hunting, because it's just more convenient to carry it like that than it is with a 30-round mag sticking out there, getting me all poked in the back and everything. And I've kind of gone over the upper. It's just to go over it again, it's 223 Wild with a 1 8 twist, standard M4 profile barrel. It's not a heavy barrel or a pencil barrel or anything like that. It's got a carbine length gas tube in it, and it's got it's like a 15-inch M-lock rail that I like better than the key mod. They're narrower, they're lighter. I like the way that things attach to them better, although the only thing I really have attached to it is a QD swivel right there. I have a Picatinny rail I could attach to the bottom if I wanted to, but I find that I don't usually need it. So basically that's it for the upper. When I got the upper and I got everything put together, I noticed that I took it out in the yard, put safety on, and I just chambered around, because I wanted to make sure that everything was going to function on the lower. Well, when I ejected the live round, I noticed that my bullet had like scratches on it. So looking at the upper a little bit closer, I did notice that there was some imperfections in the feed ramps, and I just took a little file, a tiny file like a jeweler's file, and kind of knocked those down a little bit and cleaned them up. It was easy. Everything's fine. They need to be polished or anything. They just had a little burr on them, and I have seen some instances of people finding those in their Bear Creek uppers, and so did I. Like I said, I wasn't that worried about it. But back to the build. Kind of digressed there a little bit. I apologize. I already had the scope, already had the mag, which is basically not the AR, so I had to order the lower parts kit, which this is a Cobra braid thing that I built right here. But this is the Minimalist from Palmetto State Armory, the buttstock, the buffer tube, the lower parts kit. I did order one with the enhanced polish trigger. I'm gonna be honest with you, that's the way to go. It's not it certainly isn't a 3.5 pound POF or a Rise Armament or something like that, but if you put a different set of springs in it like I did, you can get down to about a 4.5 pound trigger, which is about where mine's at. The rings, believe it or not, these came off of Amazon. They're Monstroms, and the reviews were mixed on those too. People were stripping them out and this, that, and the other. I tightened mine down to the torque spec that Monstrom gave using my torque screwdriver. Everything was perfect. There was no stripping of any threads or nothing like that. They're light, they work, they stay tight. In a couple hundred rounds so far, I've not lost my zero. It's not wavered a bit. So that's the lower parts kit. The lower itself, the stripped lower, is an Anderson, and the kids bought me that for Father's Day. That was my Father's Day present from my two kids, my son and my daughter. And I got some things to talk about that in a minute, but honestly, I don't see anything wrong at all with the Anderson lower. Not at all. And if you'll notice, this is a side charging upper that I got from Bear Creek Arsenal. That's the reason I bought that. Now there are a couple of issues, and evidently I've forgotten how to use I've forgotten how to use Loctite, or B, I didn't have it clean enough or something. But this is constantly coming loose. The charging handle is constantly coming loose, and that's the one thing I don't like about the upper, is having to constantly be having to tighten that. The fit between the upper and the lower, and I don't know if this was due to the upper or the lower or a combination of those things, is not what I would call precise. Not by any stretch of the imagination. There. And it looks like I'm having a hard time getting that out. And I am to an extent, but I'll show you why in a second. Ah, darn it. Looks like I'm going to have to do this the old-fashioned way a little bit. There. Whoops. I think you can see it, but I put the little rubber shim in it right there, because the fit between the upper and the lower was horrible, at least by my standards, and I couldn't stand it. It's not perfect as it is right now, but it's actually loosened up a little bit, so I'm probably going to have to order another shim or whatever they call those things. They're only about $2 or $3 a piece. So that's the two drawbacks to the upper as far as I'm concerned. I really like this upper. It's light. It doesn't, I mean, it weighs hardly any. This whole AR probably weighs maybe 6.5 pounds. And I haven't put on the scales, but I guarantee you it's cheaper than hauling around my Creedmoor in the Magpul Hunter stock. And I like the minimalist. Something, you know, one of my friends says, "Oh, it's front heavy." Well, look, maybe for him, but it ain't his rifle. This rifle to me is not perfect, but pretty darn close. So that's where we're at on the upper. The lower parts kit from Palmetto, I'm gonna be honest with you, I can't say anything negative about that. It came in a timely manner. The kit was complete. Everything was packaged where it was easy to know, you know, which parts went where. I gotta hand it to them. They make a really good setup, and I really like the polished trigger. I had to drop that bolt to be able to open it, but I really like the enhanced polished trigger. And I think I'm actually going to open this again and show you something, because along with the enhanced polished trigger, I also used a JP reduced power spring kit with the hammer and the trigger spring. I hope you can see them in there. It's hard for me to tell because I got my bifocals on and I can't see very good like that with my bifocals on. But I mean, it was a clean build. Everything worked exactly like it was supposed to. The safety works fine. There's a little bit of creep in the trigger. I'll try to show you. There's a little bit of creep in the trigger, but when it breaks, it's a really clean break. So I got no. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think Palmetto outdid themselves in regard to their lower parts kit. You know. So anyway, there's a couple of things. I did use Rise Armament anti-walk pins, and I'm going to be straight up honest with you. I'm going to call them tomorrow and see what can happen, but I'm not that happy with their anti-walk pins. I've used them on one other AR and I didn't have to Loctite them. They were tight and they stayed tight. But these, I had to change the screws on 2 of them because their screws walked out. The pin didn't walk out, the screw did. And as you know, it's tight. It's as tight as I can get it. And the pins still move back and forth, you know, just a tiny bit on the upper. And I don't know if the pins themselves are too long, or if perhaps this lower receiver was, you know, the lower receiver was narrower than others. I don't know. To be honest with you, I really don't care. I'm probably not going to leave those anti-walk pins in there for much longer. I'm probably going to go to a different style, maybe a POF or something, because not to be harsh, but unless they're willing to step up and do something with those, and I'm assuming that they will, that'll make a big difference in some things. I'm not that impressed with them, at least on this lower. But that doesn't stop it from shooting well. It just means that I'm constantly having to tighten something up. And I'm not going to Loctite them because I still don't know whether I'm going to keep them or not. So anyway, whoops. That's that's my AR build. I finished it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. One of my quarantine things. You know, like I said, I already have the scope. Had to buy the rings. Rings were like $20 on Amazon. The kids bought me the lower for Father's Day. But even if I'd had to buy the rings and the lower, honestly, I got less than $400 in this AR. I caught the upper on sale during Memorial Day for like $230. The lower and the lower parts kit, even with the springs and the anti-walk pins, was probably $150. So you know you're looking at $230 and one that's $380. Anderson lowers, I've been seeing those even these days, you know, on sale for 45 and $50. So to be honest with you, you can get yourself into a pretty good AR-15 for less than $450 if you're willing to do some of the work yourself. And it's not hard to build one of these lowers. I've never built an upper, but the lowers, there's so many YouTube videos out there. You just find one, follow along with it, it'll be fine. You know, rewind it, go forward, rewind it, you know, just go one step at a time. Be real, you know, take your time, be patient. It took me about an hour. I suppose if a guy built 6 or 7 of them, I'm gonna be honest with you, you could put one of these together in 15 minutes. It's that simple. But it took me a little longer than that. So anyway, I don't know, you know, what other people's feelings are about these types of rifles. You know, I believe that a person ought to be able to own whatever kind of rifle that they want. And, you know, just because I was never a big fan of the AR doesn't mean that I didn't like them. They just didn't, you know, suit my purposes. But I think with a little bit of luck, I might have finally found one that does. You know, time will tell. If I still have this thing in another year, I'll have it the rest of my life. That's how I am. If I've got a gun in the cabinet and it don't get used, it don't stay. I don't really have very many. One of my friends told me one time I was a minimalist. So, yep, I am. I have certain tools for certain jobs, and that's what I use. I don't use other things. But by and large, I'm really, really pleased with this rifle. And I mean, I think if y'all wanted to build one, I think you'd be pleased too. Well, anyway, that's about it for this one. If you like it, go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you're interested. We'd like it if you'd do that. If you got comments, post your comments. We try to answer them as quickly and as timely as possible. And in the meantime, y'all be good.